Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie, and today's session is going to be about marzipan. And marzipan is made from almond paste with some sugar and some glucose, and it's used for a lot of decorative and confectionery work in the kitchen. But before we do our live session on our marzipan, we're going to be talking about the contest that we have till the end of July. For every assignment that you submit and you pass, you're going to be getting an entry into the raffle, and you can win this nice mini iPad. These are so nice. You can work on your schoolwork on these, and they're super nice for taking pictures. I have one myself. I just love it. If it's right in my bag, I take it wherever I go. If I need to get access to the portal or any of my emails or anything, super nice for that because the screen is bigger than your phone and takes wonderful pictures. So you'll be sure to love your iPad mini. So get those assignments in so you can have more chances in the raffle for the iPad mini, and it's until the end of July. And keep in mind too, if you're finished with the program by the end of July, you'll be in the graduation ceremony, which is going to take place on August the 2nd, which is a Saturday. And even if you're not a graduate, you can view the online ceremony. So check it out. And it's something that if you're not in this time, you'll be in the graduation ceremony in the future. And also keep in mind with the contest, the students, the top 5 students that submit and pass the most assignments will receive an Escoffier branded chef jacket with their name embroidered on it. So bring in those assignments. You've got a few more weeks left till the end of the month, and it's going to put you closer to graduation and closer to your chance at the iPad mini. This is a black one. It's super nice. It's in the box, sealed, ready to go, ready to be mailed to your home. So knowing that, let's get started on our marzipan. So like I said, the marzipan is made of almond paste and some corn syrup and some sugar. You're going to be using the powdered sugar. And almond paste is ground almonds with some sugar in it. It's usually a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 part almonds and 1 part sugar. And then there's just enough moisture added to bring this all together. And this is something that's manufactured. You can easily buy it today. A long time ago in the past, before you could buy it in your grocery stores or from your purveyors, pastry chefs had to actually grind their own almonds and make their own paste. But today we can buy it. It's a little expensive, so be careful what you're doing with it. You don't want to make mistakes when you're using these expensive things. And it's typically about $7 a pound. So it tastes delicious. It's nice to use in the kitchen. So keep the almond paste in mind. So I've got some almond paste that I bought, and we're going to be using 1 pound of almond paste and 1 pound of powdered sugar. We're not going to use granulated sugar because it's going to make it too grainy, and it's something that we're going to be mixing until it's pliable, almost like plastic-like. And we're going to be adding a little bit of corn syrup, and that's going to be adding a little bit more sweetness and some moisture to help it become pliable. So the almond paste, you can typically find it in a can. I got this little can from my grocery store, and commercially it usually comes in the number 10 cans, which is 7 pounds, and they're usually about $50, so keep that in mind. And it's sometimes packaged in plastic rolls as well. But if you're going to buy it in the can form, it's kind of, it's pretty dense and it can be hard to get out. So what I recommend is cutting the top and the bottom off the can, and then you can just easily push it out. And this also works with the large number 10 can, the 7 pound almond paste. So keep this in mind. This is a lot easier than spooning it out. Just cutting it, taking the top and the bottom off, and then you can just cut the pieces that you need and then wrap the rest in plastic. It does dry out. It can get crusty, so as soon as you're finished with it, wrap it in plastic. I recommend once you've opened your can to definitely refrigerate this until the next time that you're going to be using it. So do we have any questions so far? No? Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making this in the mixer. So easily cut the almond paste. I've got my almond paste in the mixer ready. And we're going to be using the paddle attachment. Don't use your whip for this because you could break the whip. because it's heavy, it's kind of dense, and we're going to be mixing this on a low speed. And what we're going to do first is we're going to be adding the corn syrup to the almond paste in the mixer, and then we're going to be adding the sifted powdered sugar. So let's go ahead and get our powdered sugar sifted and ready to go. This makes a decent sized batch with the 1 pound of powdered sugar and the 1 pound of almond paste. You can easily cut it in half. You can store this in the refrigerator for a few weeks' time. So there's not going to be any dairy or any really perishable items in here, so it's going to store for a little while. Just going to want to look for an odor if you're storing it in there for some time, if it just starts to ferment, if it got contaminated somehow. And do we have any questions so far on anything? Okay, I'm just kind of pushing this through. This is a little lumpy. Remember that we are always sifting our powdered sugars and our flours, especially the powdered sugar, and especially if you're in a commercial kitchen and you're buying this in a 50-pound bag, you're going to have some lumps. I mean, you're going to have some chunks in there because that bag has been moving around from a warehouse onto a truck. It's probably been stacked up. Things are getting a little bit compressed, so you're really going to get a lot of chunks in those larger bags of powdered sugar, like a 50-pounder. So be mindful of that. If you open it up and you see that, don't be alarmed. That's just the way it is. And we have a question.
How much corn syrup will be added to the mixture?
The question is how much corn syrup is added to the mixture. Well, I've got my 1 pound of almond paste, I've got 3 ounces of the corn syrup, and I've got 1 pound of my powdered sugar. So it's 1 pound, 3 ounces, and 1 pound. And keep in mind the 3 ounces of corn syrup that I'm going to be adding, I weighed that because on the recipe it said 3 ounces, and you're going to want to weigh it when it's a liquid, when it just says ounces. But if you see 3 fluid ounces, you're going to want to measure that in a measuring cup. It's nice to use a clear glass measuring cup with a spout on it. So let's get started. We're going to go ahead and add our corn syrup to our almond paste. And this is one of these things, you know, just take your time with it. It's going to take a little time to come together. And once we get this started, we're going to be adding our powdered sugar just a little bit at a time. And do we have any questions on anything so far? I'm going to go ahead and start this. Just going to let the corn syrup work its way through. And keep in mind that you're going to want to make sure your bowl and everything is really clean with this, because you can easily color this if there's something else in there. And the marzipan, it's nice for coloring as well, just some lighter colors. You don't want to be putting a lot of liquid color in here because it's definitely going to make it a lot softer, but like a little touch of pink, a little touch of green, and would be a little nice color. Maybe a little touch of orange goes well too. So these two are coming together pretty well. I'm just going to be scraping this down. And like I said, this is going to be something that's pliable. You're going to be able to pick it up and roll it. So it's going to be thick. So don't accidentally use your whisk attachment, because you're going to break it and you'll be buying another one. Okay, now that we've got that mixed up pretty well, we're going to be adding our powdered sugar just a little bit at a time. Because this is, you have something pretty firm in here and you're adding something pretty powdery, so we're adding it just a little bit at a time so it doesn't come up on us, and it's going to mix in a lot better. You might have to mix it a little bit by hand too before you turn on the mixer. And this is something that you're really not going to overwork, so just take your time mixing it. Don't put all this powdered sugar in at one time, because you're going to be making a big cloud in your kitchen. Even a little bit at a time, that can happen. So just take your time. kind of let it work its way in. And does anyone have any questions? Has anyone made marzipan before? Have you used almond paste for anything? It's a super nice flavor. Makes so many nice things in the kitchen. You can use almond paste in cookies and so many different pastries. And we have a question or an answer.
Is this what you would use for decorative fruit?
For decorative
Fruit. Is this what you
Oh.
would use to make decorative fruit?
The question is this what you would use for decorative fruit? Yes, you can make little fruits with this, and they're so cute. We'll be making some of those next week. And next week we're going to be making a few more things with the marzipan. Today we're making the mixture, and we're going to be covering a cake, and then we'll do some more decorative things next week with the marzipan, so you'll have some ideas. Super nice. It's a great flavor. It smells so good. You're really going to enjoy this. I highly recommend it. It's nice for covering cakes. You're going to work with it in the same way that you work with fondant, but it's got a little bit more color to it from the almonds. Fondant is a little bit, it's whiter, it's more true, but you will love this once you try it, and you can use it for so many things. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit thicker here, and you see this is getting a little more pliable. It's pulling away from the sides, which is nice. It's pulling away from the sides. It doesn't need a lot of scraping, but we will get in there and scrape it down. And I'm just adding this powdered sugar a little bit at a time. And do we have any more questions on the almond paste? So even though the almond paste, it has a nice almond flavor, you can add a little bit of an extract to this just for a little hint of another flavor. Orange would be really nice. You could add a little bit of rum, even a little coconut for something really different. So keep that in mind, just a little bit of extract. Anything that you're adding to this is going to make it more sticky, so keep in mind just a little bit. With colorings, just a little bit as well. So it's coming together nicely. The sugar is getting it a little bit lighter in color, so you can hear the machine getting thicker. And this is why I recommend don't use that whisk attachment. You'll be buying a new one for sure. Okay, and do we have any more questions? We're almost done adding our powdered sugar, our 1 pound of powdered sugar. Remember, you've got 1 pound of almond paste, 1 pound of powdered sugar, and 3 ounces of corn syrup. And we have another question. We have a couple questions.
One,
Okay.
you've already touched on this, but somebody didn't hear you. Is the corn syrup weighed in volume or liquid? 2, can almond paste be frozen? And 3, can you use almond extract?
Okay, we've got a few questions. The first one is about the corn syrup. Was it weighed or was it used in fluid ounces? In the recipe it says 3 ounces. It doesn't say 3 fluid ounces, so I went ahead and I weighed it. And another question is can you use the almond extract? Yeah, it's just going to enhance the almond flavor a bit, but it already has so much nice almond flavor that I really don't think that you need to add any unless it's a personal preference. But keep in mind, you can add some other flavors, like I recommend orange or even the rum, or coconut would be nice, or even a little bit of lemon too. And another question is can you freeze the almond paste? You can freeze almond paste, but it has a real long shelf life. It lasts for a long time in the can. Just pick the can up and it's dated, and it's going to last for a while in your refrigerator, but if you don't think you're going to be using it in a month's time, I would go ahead and freeze it. Just wrap it really well, and if it gets a little bit soggy, you can feel it when it comes out. If it picked up some moisture while it was in the freezer, just add a little bit more powdered sugar when you're making your marzipan. Once you start working with this, you're going to become familiar with the consistency, and you'll know when to add a little bit more powdered sugar. So we've got our last bit of powdered sugar, and we're just going to leave this mix. I'm just kind of turning it on and off because it's getting a little bit thicker now, so we're just going to leave this mix and come together. It will come together, just give it a chance. If for some reason it doesn't, you can add just a little touch more of the corn syrup, but give it a chance to come together on its own first and see how it does. Just leave it kind of work on its own with the paddle attachment. It's going to be kind of rubbing it together, and it really smells great. Once you try this, you'll see you really don't need to add any almond extract unless you want a really intense almond flavor. See, it's coming together on its own, so kind of just don't jump to adding a little bit more of the corn syrup. You definitely can if you need to, and I may need to, but I'm just giving this a chance to come together on its own. And it's going to be forming a pliable, almost like a ball, and it's going to be like almost a plastic-like consistency. That's a good way to describe it. And it's coming together nicely, kind of working on its own. Once it comes together a little bit more, I'm going to put it on the table and knead it a little bit. But before I take it off the machine, I'm going to be sure that it doesn't need any more glucose. Okay, so it's coming together nicely. It's nice and pliable. It turned lighter in color. This looks great like this. As long as it's coming together for you and you can knead it by hand the rest of the way, it's fine. You really don't need to add any extra glucose. It's just if it stays real mealy and crumbly like that for a long time that you're going to want to add a little bit more. So it smells super great and tastes real nice too. Let's go ahead and knead this together. I'm going to be kneading it by hand. I'm just going to dump it out on the table. Kind of a big amount. You might want to cut the recipe in half. And since it was kind of sticking together and going around the bowl, it kind of almost like scraped down the bowl itself. I don't see any like powdered sugar debris or anything in the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and knead this together. I'm going to do half at a time. It's thick, so it's going to give you a little bit of a workout here. And I'm just kneading this on my table. I don't want to add any powdered sugar to this just yet because it's just a perfect consistency. Once you start adding that, you're going to be getting some dryness. When we roll this out, we're going to roll this out with powdered sugar, just like we would do a short dough, but instead of using flour, we're going to be using powdered sugar. So it's got some oil to it. You can see it on the work surface. So I'm just really kneading this together. And it's kind of a big piece, so I'm just doing half at a time until it's nice and smooth. And be sure to wrap this in plastic because it will form a crust on you. So this is about half the mixture that I made. If you're thinking of cutting it in half, or you can make the whole recipe too, store it in your fridge. I think once you taste it, you're really going to like it a lot. I'm just going to bring this together, and we have another question.
How much extra syrup should be added? And if you add an extract, how much would you add?
We have two questions. One question is, if you add a little bit extra corn syrup, how much would you add? Well, that's going to depend on what it needs to come together. I would say for this full recipe, the 1 pound of almond paste and 1 pound of powdered sugar and 3 ounces of corn syrup, I would start by adding just maybe 2 teaspoons or 1.5 teaspoons of the corn syrup and see if that helps bring it together. Don't add too much because you might cause some stickiness. And for the extract, for this size mixture, I would add a 1/2 teaspoon of the extract or even a 1/4 teaspoon. So be careful that you're not adding too much liquid to the marzipan because you want it to remain pliable and plastic-like so you can easily roll it out and put it over some of your desserts, some of your little cakes, or even make some fruits or other decorations with it. Okay. So we've got our marzipan, super nice, turned out nice and smooth. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to roll a little bit out. And do we have any questions on anything so far? So I've got a little cake that I made earlier, and I just covered it with a little bit of buttercream. We're going to roll out a small piece of our marzipan and just put it over the cake. And we're going to be rolling it to about 1/8 of an inch thick. And we don't need a big piece. So I'm just going to break off a little piece here to roll out. And keep in mind too that if you refrigerate this before you roll it out, that's going to help too, especially if you're in a warm climate. And also, if you're in a warm climate or if you have a lot of stickiness with the marzipan, you can take your powdered sugar and add just a little bit of cornstarch to it, and that's going to help with some of that stickiness when you're rolling it out. So I would put a little bit of your powdered sugar on the table, and then we're going to be rolling this out. And do we have any questions on anything? And I've got some extra powdered sugar on here. So what I'm going to be doing is just brushing it off. And keep in mind the little trick, adding a little bit of cornstarch if it's a little sticky, depending on where you live. If you live in an area where it's really humid, I definitely recommend adding a little bit of cornstarch to your powdered sugar when you're rolling this out. It's going to be a lot easier for you. So I've got my pastry brush from the toolkit, or any pastry brush will work. And I've got my little cake, and we're going to be covering it. So I'm just going to trim a little bit of this off. And then we're just going to gently drape this over our little cake. It's super cute. If you make this, you'll be sure to dazzle your friends and family. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of molding the rolled out marzipan around the little cake. I'm just kind of being careful. This might crack on you from time to time. Don't be discouraged. You can kind of pinch the cracks together a little bit. So I've got a few cracks here. My buttercream got a little bit warm. You're going to want to make sure, if you're putting this over a buttercream cake, that it's nice and firm. Otherwise you won't have that sliding. I've got a little bit of sliding. But when we're finished, we're going to be using this for a plated dessert. So we're going to pinch this together. And I'm going to be covering it with some chocolate sauce, so it'll be sure to be all covered up. So next week we're going to be using our marzipan to make some different decorative items. We're going to be making some fruit and some flowers and some garnishes as well. So you can save these pieces and roll them out again. Now we have our small cake covered with marzipan that we're just going to be plating up, and we're going to have a nice little decorative dessert. So I've got a little bit of cracking, but that's okay. We're going to wipe off our table a little bit. So this is a super cute, really delicious little dessert for your friends and family. And I'm just going to be covering this with some chocolate sauce and some fresh fruit. And then we have a nice little plated dessert. We have the raspberry sauce from the assignments, and we're just going to be putting some dotting around. And then we're just going to put some chocolate sauce over the cake. Just going to kind of run it down the sides a little bit. And that's a nice, cute little marzipan dessert. It's going to kind of get some of this pulling off of here. We'll put a few raspberries on top. And some berries on the plate. And a little bit of fresh mint. So please stay tuned. Next week we'll be making some more things with our marzipan. I'm going to put it in the refrigerator. We're going to save it for next week. It's going to be nice and chilled and ready to go. So we'll see you next time. And don't forget about the contest. Get those assignments in until the end of the month, and then you'll get more chances towards the iPad mini. It's a nice little black version. You'll love it. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.